And you may be very surprised to find that there's thousands of people that are involved in the commercial process. I'm going to cut this a little bit short, but just to give you an idea, I'll read a very short excerpt. Okay, now contemplate all the saws and trucks and rope and all the other countless gear used in harvesting and carting the cedar logs to the railroad siding. Think of all the people and numberless skills that went into their production and fabrication. The mining of ore, the making of steel and its refinement, the saws, axes, motors, the growing of hemp. Well, we don't have hemp anymore, but they used to grow it back then. Bringing it through all the stages to heavy and strong rope, the logging camps with their beds and mess halls, the cookeries and the raising of all the foods, and just think of all the people that just all the loggers that just need coffee. And what I'm trying to portray is even something very simple as a pencil, mass-produced, takes quite a lot of capital. In other words, when I say capital, it needs human resources, it needs machines, it needs productions, it needs the property for the factory, etc. And it's really pretty intricate. So, the same could be done with modern devices like plasma TVs or computers, or even a birthday cake or a dinner entree. The supply chains are very complicated these days. But the main point of iPencil is that yes, planning must be done, but economic planning is best done in the millions of individual free transactions done for the mutual benefit of both parties. Not by central planners like Paulson, Summers, Geithner, Robert Rubin, Romers, Bernstein, Sheila Bair of the FDIC, and Ben Bernanke of the Federal Reserve. They really have no idea how to make a pencil or anything else for that matter. Next, I want to move on to spending. So, what if one studies how if one studies how we arrive at our current situation? The answer is really tied to massive government spending over the Bush years, but even really as far back as after the post-World War II years, which resulted in a massive, almost $12 trillion national debt. We have really been engaged in a game of, there's a video here, of Spenda, where this comedian took something and basically turned it into like a towering game of Jenga and kept stacking it up. So tomorrow, if you want to check it out, it's like a 1-minute comedy video. But why all this spending? Why? It is because our government, central bankers, and almost all modern-day economists still subscribe to the benefits of government spending to ease downturns, which follow the teachings of John Maynard Keynes. However, this strategy is unsustainable and is only a stalling tactic for governments to employ. It falls apart when the currency implodes. When the dollar dies, so does the entire economy. My message is that playing a game of Spenda, this time it will likely not work. In fact, even if it does, this only means that the next downturn will be downright disastrous. It would be a good subject for another talk, but those who have studied the Austrian theory of the trade cycle on boom-bust cycles are already aware that the depressions and recessions in America in the last 100 years were all brought on by inflationary, usually war, spending, then resolved by government spending, and each aftermath has pushed the dollar closer and closer to its demise. Of course, the lovely truth about the boom-bust cycles is that they simply would not exist with a system of sound money and the free market. So in summary, economic central planning will not work, as the focus is on job creation, not maximizing economic output. Furthermore, the plan will not work since the chosen, unelected central planners cannot possibly imitate the billions and billions of mutually beneficial trades that occur naturally in a vibrant free market economy. This was the great lesson learned from the monumental failure of communist Russia. Lastly, Keynesian deficit and stimulus spending only postpones the inevitable crack-up boom to the currency. Now for the tougher part of the talk. It's all fine and dandy to point out the holes in things, but what will work? And what could we do differently? And the first thing that I have is actually to eliminate the federal income tax. And I want to explain this. Okay, I actually don't have the slide. I'll go into some detail, but you can actually check the income tax plank on my website for a little bit more details on the math. But if you check the 2008 White House budget, you'll find that the total planned outlays were $2.9 trillion. Of that, basically $3 trillion. Of that, $1.2 trillion were collected from the federal income tax. So, if we just do a little bit of math here, the stimulus plan, like I said, was about $1.1 trillion. It's pretty much about the same. If you take like the TARP bailout or the banker bailout from last year, that's also $800 billion plus with the national debt on top of it. It's also actually about $1 trillion. So, you could easily just kind of get away with substituting in these. You could easily get rid of the stimulus plan and instead just have a tax holiday, even if it was just for like a year or so. So, let's take a look real quick at these numbers that are up here. In 2008, I do want to highlight, this was under Bush, and a lot of the mess that's still left that President Obama is cleaning up actually does belong to the groups or the regimes in front of them, or the administrations. So in 2008, this was the largest budget deficit in the history of the United States, $460 billion. This year, partly due to the banker bailout from last year, but also the stimulus plan, we're going to be between $1.6 and $1.8 trillion. 2010, also over $1 trillion. 2011, also over about $1 trillion, and so on and so forth for quite a few years. This is just not good. So, what if government were to do the unprecedented, and instead of spending $787 billion by borrowing it from China, borrowing it from Saudi Arabia, borrowing it from Japan, what if they decided just to not collect the income taxes due? Well, let's see what would happen. First, each individual would then naturally make the best decisions for themselves, whether it is to save, pay down debts, or spend on desired goods and services, which would actually create more jobs. There is no administrative cost. Second, there's no administrative cost for government to do all this bureaucracy and stimulus planning. Third, there is no need for the government to spend roughly $15 billion in running the IRS, which is the budget for the IRS, and also tax preparer fees, although the rebates would need to be withheld and that type of thing. Also, the IRS, I'm not sure if anyone here knows how many employees are employed by the IRS, but the IRS employs 92,000 people. And, a lot of them would lose their jobs. And, while this would add to the number of unemployed, but think about it, their jobs actually, economically speaking, they're not productive whatsoever. So our total production would not suffer. And in fact, when they return to work, say for a firm as an accountant or what have you, our overall production would actually be boosted. The second idea is to slash government spending. In the President's January speech, he said, quote, we'll create nearly 500,000 jobs by investing in clean energy, by committing to double the production of alternative energy in the next 3 years, and by modernizing more than 75% of federal buildings and improving the energy efficiency of 2 million American homes. Well, I am not nearly so arrogant as to believe that I could decide how best to produce alternative energy, and I've already explained why it would be best for the administration to not even try. However, when he says that we can modernize the heating, cooling, and powering of 75% of the federal buildings, I think instead, how about we close down 75% of federal buildings? I'm not sure if people here realize this, but out of our workforce, 23% are employed by the government. Manufacturing is around 12% or so. So, why in the depths of possibly quite monster depression would we want to spend money on our ultimately completely unproductive departments of labor, agriculture, homeland security, energy, education, this is the federal level, CIA, the IRS, etc.? Why not slash all the congressional and departmental staff budgets by 50%? yes, there'll be a temporary supply of these people, but just think of the fantastic increases that we would have in our production with a larger workforce. And, you could do, I'll cover that in a second. Idea number 3 is to slash military spending and end the military empire.